Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel again. I'm continuing my talks about aliens this week. And last time I talked about, the problems that there are with the idea about psychics communicating with aliens, and how sometimes fantasy can get involved, and this idea of kind of like a mass hysteria that can go around things. But this time I want to talk about how it would happen if the aliens did communicate through people like myself. In my last video about this topic, I was perhaps a bit hard on some of the people that are trance mediums and supposedly give messages from alien people. But my thoughts have been, of course, last time I talked about, the dangers of mass hysteria, and the dangers of if something has not been disclosed, how our imaginations can get a bit involved with things to the point that we start to fill in the spaces and start to fill in the stuff with crazy ideas and fantasies that kind of distract from the truth. So I have to always talk with these talks from what I kind of know myself, and not kind of build on other people's things and what other people say. So I'm going to talk to you from my observations about the possibilities of using clairvoyance to communicate with people on other planets. Now, I've said before that I feel that there is life on other planets. It seems preposterous, I said, that there couldn't be, with a sheer number of possibilities of planets in the Goldilocks zone out there where life could evolve, and we might even find some primitive form of life on Mars or on the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, and even we might even find it as far out as the planets Uranus and the rest of it. It might be everywhere. Life might be everywhere in a primitive form. And I talked also about how, it might be difficult for life even to get this far of becoming intelligent, because we might destroy ourselves with nuclear weapons and things. So anyway, life, I'm pretty much sure, is out there. Just logically, it's likely to be out there. The scary thing would be if there was no life out there and we were alone. That would be the big scary one, because it would show how even more precious our life is, But anyway, that's going into other speculation. But I want to talk more about how would an alien communicate with us if we were able to communicate consciousness to consciousness, Because I've said that telepathy seems to be able to spread any distance. It seems to be able to span any distance, certainly on Earth. And like I spoke about how if I do a reading for someone in China or Australia and so forth, my mind can connect with them. So if the spirit world are going to communicate with us, what am I going to see inwardly, Am I going to see some sort of octopus creature in my mind's eye as they communicate with me, I think it would be pretty scary stuff, and I'd be immediately concerned that I'm in a world of fantasy with that. And even so, but you see, but then I have to think about how do the spirit world communicate with me. Now, when I communicate with someone that's lost somebody in the spirit world, say a child had gone over at the age of 15, I would describe to the mother, say, a child of 15 years old that's part of the spirit world, and that child communicator would tell us and speak to us in all the forms that the mother knew him at the age of 15. And yet, if I'm doing that 20 years later, I won't be describing somebody that's 35 years old. I'll be describing them as they knew them. So clearly, the spirit world take a form so that I know who I'm talking about, and the mother knows who she's talking about. So in the spirit world, at least, it's kind of malleable over there, right? And perhaps it's the same with the spirit guides. And so if you're interested in this, before I move on, don't forget my book, because in my book, Messages from the Universe, as well as talking about how we communicate using clairvoyance and the possibilities of communication with other planets, I also give you a lot more detail there about how it works when we do this mediumship, what it's like to be a spirit communicating, for example, with the medium. How do you get your message across? Those are interesting things to look at. So this is explored a lot in my book if you want to look at that whole idea of how spiritualism works. So a 15-year-old would describe himself as a 15-year-old boy to the mother communicating when I see it through mediumship. Now, what about the spirit guides? Who are they? Because they often worry me, because people get so carried away about, I've got this big chief that's my spirit guide, and my spirit guide's a really, really old one, and my spirit guide's a very high Egyptian priest, and so forth. It's almost like an ego trip goes on there. So first, there's a lot of fantasy with all this spirit guide ideas. But when my spirit guides first made touch with me, when I was developing my mediumship, one in particular, a big American Indian man that appeared in my vision, really strong, not like just a fantasy, but boom, there, not physically there, but in my meditations. I said, well, if you're one of my spirit guides, why do you come as an Indian? It's bonkers, isn't it? Were you an Indian? And he explained to me, he said, well, that's the form I come in, right? I appear in this form so that you can see that and identify me, and you'll know that I do a certain type of work with you. So I don't know whether he had an Indian form, or he took on perhaps the astral shell of an Indian form, or somehow he used an Indian form to communicate with me. But behind that, as in behind each of us actually, is a being of light. You watching me, you see Craig now talking to you in this lovely, beautiful form that I take. But I am actually a spirit, and I am actually a spirit, a light being, as you are. We are beings of light communicating through this body. So the spirit world use a form to communicate with us, as do the spirit communicators use a form. So surely, couldn't that be the way that the aliens would communicate with us? Wouldn't they take a form that wouldn't scare us? Wouldn't they take a form that we could understand, a human form? So maybe these spirit guides sometimes, maybe the voice that's coming through them is the voice of people from other planets. I'm just putting that out there as an idea. Right? And similarly, some of these holy men that have walked the earth, I often wonder if they, they're such high beings. They are beyond human in the form we understand them. Miraculous people. When I saw Sathya Sai Baba, who there's a lot of controversy around, I know, but he seemed to be coming from another level of being. And as I understood it, every person that came to see him was seeing something different. They were seeing what they could see. So some people were seeing chaos. Some people were getting quite scared by it. Some people were seeing amazing someone to worship. And some people were seeing different things, So each of us can only perceive it according to our ability to comprehend. And that's just something that happened here on Earth. So maybe perhaps E.T. has walked amongst us, or does walk amongst us, and we all see it in a different way according to our ability to comprehend things. Because I would have thought that an ET would have, if they're an advanced being, and if we look at the stories that they tell us about the future in India, the idea of the Satya Yuga, how when we get to a certain point in the evolution, or spiritual evolution, or the spiritual movement of the planets, where the galaxy gets to a certain position in the universe, the nature of reality changes, the nature of reality itself changes, and consciousness becomes something that is all. We understand in the Satya Yuga that everything is consciousness. Even me is the consciousness of God, as it were. In the Dwapara Yuga and the Tetra Yugas, we may understand it much more in the terms of either energy, that everything is energy, or everything is psychology. In the material universe, we think everything is material, is the physical body creates everything. So there's this idea put forward there that there are different ways of being, different types of reality, even here on Earth. So the ET would have transcended the delusionary idea that the material world is the be-all and end-all of everything. He would have seen and understood the higher levels of consciousness. Now, I'm not making that a bit too difficult for you, but this is some of my thoughts on how these aliens would have communicated with us, because I've also had this whole tie-up in my work with the Naadis oracles in India, and they do seem to point to a superhuman type of people, people that had transcended time, that could communicate through from the past to the present, who had somehow stepped out of time itself. Because, you know, we assume that an alien civilization is going to be some advanced material civilization. I mean, I would expect an advanced civilization not to require material things, that one would materialize what you want, would levitate what you want, for example, that superhuman powers would come, or super alien powers, as it were, in their case, you know. So it could be that there were, that this is how the spirit world would describe themselves, and how the alien world would also describe the same sort of thing, that consciousness is the core of everything. So if they can communicate, they would communicate using these techniques of clairvoyance, but I don't think we're quite ready for it yet. But have they communicated? And I'm gonna continue this a little bit more later. So my idea is here, just to summarize, is that if we can communicate with the spirit world, we may not even realize we've done it. It may be that it's coming through a form, through us mediums, that we don't realize it's coming from. We think it's coming from the spirit world, but it could also, just as equally, be coming from a being on another planet. And does it matter? You know, because what is important is the message behind it, the teaching that we're given of how we can ourselves become awake and aware beings, because that's the purpose of life on Earth, and it's also the purpose of life anywhere else in the universe. All of it is about consciousness and the evolution of consciousness. And the more we get into this level of understanding that's what it's all about, and we get closer to this idea that it's behind it all is this fantastic consciousness, this peace, this love. I mean, that's what the aliens would be understanding too, ultimately. Anyway, I'm going to continue this in my next talk. So don't forget, you want to know more about these things, do read my book, Messages from the Universe. Also, there's a bit of hints of it in my other one, Mystic Journey to India, as well. And if you enjoy the whole idea of communicating and using clairvoyance, don't forget, on my website at psychics.co.uk, you can book readings with myself, my wife Jane, and also with our team of psychics that works all over the world by telephone. You can even just book a little short 10-minute reading there, and there's lots of special offers on price if you want to just give it a try. Okay, well, thanks for joining us again. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.